We start with psychologist Dr. Norman Goodman being flown over to the middle of the Pacific Ocean, where he meets up with US Navy Captain Harold Barnes, who's assembled a familiar team of Norman's old buddies for a super secret mission, including his ex-girlfriend and biochemist Dr. Beth Halperin, code-breaking mathematician Dr. Harry Adams, and astrophysicist Dr. Ted Fielding. Because turns out the Navy have found a giant fuck-off spacecraft that's been buried under the water for over 300 years, and they've all been gathered just in case they encounter real-life space aliens and shit. Naturally, Dr. Harry Adams, who's played here by Samuel L. Jackson, don't really fancy going down and having to deal with little green men again, because last time he did that, it led to starring in one of the worst bombs of his career.
Oh, good lord!
Anyway, Norman later apologises to Harry, given they're only there because he's a phony fakey fraud who name-dropped them in a bogus report, what he wrote for the Bush administration in exchange for 35 grand, about what they should do in the event that they ever met aliens. And before you can say, are you telling me an American POTUS is corrupt and his administration full of liars, what would commission fake reports for the purposes of allaying the concerns of their own citizens? They head on down in a mini-sub, and after already starting to passively aggressively bicker amongst one another, and mainly about how Harry keeps beating Teddy to various achievement records, they promptly arrive at the wreckage, and luckily, the Navy's already set up an underwater base called the Habitat right beside it, and complete with 2 female personnel, including a random tech admin and bloody Grammy award-winning rapper Queen Latifah. So, wasting no time, they head out toward the alien ship, whilst Beth helpfully notes they're the most toxic creatures on Earth all live down here. And before he can say, I didn't know the Kardashians could survive this deep underwater, they enter the ship and are surprised to find it looks remarkably man-made, and after weirdly finding fresh human-sized footprints, Dr. Norman soon has the bright idea to split up. But naturally, the one black guy on the team totally shits himself, given poor sods like him always die first, didn't she? But Beth just jumps at the chance to get her ex-psychiatrist lover alone, and passively aggressively bollocks him for writing a phony fakey report what's now got him mixed up in underwater alien sci-fi shite, and also for having a sexual relationship with her 15 years ago despite her being his patient and him already being married. Naughty boy! When suddenly, the group find English writing all over the ship and also a human corpse, who seems to have been killed by a small bonk on the head whilst eating a bag of nuts. Not a joke. And they just can't believe they seem to be on a highly advanced American spaceship from 300 years in the past. But luckily, the ship's final flight log, named Unknown Entry Event, soon reveals how the ship accidentally entered a black hole in 2043 and somehow crash-landed in the sea in the 1700s. Lol, don't you just hate it when that happens? And later, they find a giant gold CGI testicle thing called the Sphere, which weirdly seems to be reflecting everything in the room but themselves.
Weird.
Then a title card appears stating The Analysis, and after the group tried to make sense of all this utter madness, Barnes gets a message from up on the surface that there's a giant storm heading their way, and so they either need to leave in 2 hours time or totally stay down there for a further 5 days and stuff. Naturally, most of the gang can't wait to get back to their lives despite just learning aliens are totally real and nothing will ever be the same again. Well, all except Teddy, who really just wants to stay, given he's just learned aliens are totally real and nothing at all will ever be the same again. Later, Harry chats with Norman and says that the sphere thing must be a conscious entity, given it seems to choose what it reflects and what it doesn't, and then ominously says that they're all going to totally die down there, because that entry log back on the future human spaceship was labelled Unknown Entry Event, which must mean that none of these fuckers made it back topside to tell anyone about it, or else the dopey future pilots would have known to watch out for and totally not fly into the giant fuck off black holes when exploring space. Or some shit. So anyway, he reckons they're all totally screwed and stuff. Then we cut to the next title card, and all hell starts to break loose when Barnes tells Norman that his morbid mate Harry's gone out without permission to stare at a giant golden testicle up close, and probably giving me flashbacks to that time I worked as an infection specialist in David Beckham's local nursing clinic, and bringing a whole new meaning to little old golden balls. Anyway, Harry's reflection soon gets imprinted on the sphere somehow, before he then disappears into thin air, also somehow. So Norm races over to find out what the frig's going on, and after finding Harry passed out but otherwise fine, he stares into the golden alien circle thing too, despite the last fucker who did that disappearing quicker than a little blonde girl on holiday in Portugal. Anyway, now they've wasted time pissing about trying to sort out a comatose Harry, the the storm has totally arrived up top, resulting in the safety sub soon cutting them loose and getting the heck out of Dodge like a riot guck. And to Teddy's delight, Queen Latifah reveals that they now all have to stay down there for the full 5 days and are totally on their own and shit. After another title card, Harry's still in a deep sleep, while said Queen Latifah bird goes out for a little stroll to try and do some routine maintenance checks. But shockingly, Grammy Award winning rapper Queen Latifah soon gets gangbanged by a fuckton of jellyfish. And before they can say, "I hope you've all kept well hydrated lads, because we're going to have to give this bird one heck of a golden shower if we're going to treat these stings," she totally dies of her wounds. And shortly after, Dr. Norman just shrugs and says rather her than me mate, because I'm terrified of jellyfish and shit, and going out like that would have been my worst nightmare. And although Beth notes that they're no ordinary jellyfish, Barnes takes Norman aside and totally bollocks him when he discovers he lied to him again, and that Beth in fact has a history of suicidal ideation and also addictions to mental health medications. And he just can't believe Norman's brought a bona fide nut job and his actual ex-floozy down here just because he used to secretly shag her on the side and is presumably hoping for some more hanky-panky whilst they're 2,000 leagues under the sea. Or some shit. But suddenly Teddy bursts in and says that chocolate fella's awake and totally eating us out of house and home, bro. And sure enough, Harry's out here scoffing a fry-up and is suspiciously super happy and stuff. Well, until he asks where the other chocolate bird is, and Paul Barnes has to relay with a straight face how Grammy Award winning rapper Queen Latifah was just killed by a gang of passing jellyfish whilst out for a morning stroll.
Oh my, this is tragic news.
And Harry just can't believe he was right all along and a black character has totally died first in a sci-fi horror film. And Teddy just shrugs and casually goes back to his food, and then totally freaks out when he realises he's now eating calamari, because he friggin' hates squid. And before you can say, well, I'm sure this random fact won't come up again, nor be crucially important information within the future narrative, the random tech admin suddenly receives an intense data dump of cyber code.
Oh shit, not good.
Later, Teddy has a total meltdown about how Harry got to go inside the sphere thing and thus beat him to yet another record, before depressively listing off how most physicists in his field were all super young when they made their iconic achievements, and then channels the warnings of my sex therapist by saying that if you haven't done it by the age of 35, then you probably never will.
Loser.
Anyway, after the gang are made aware of the random data dump, code-breaking mathematician Dr. Harry figures out that there's totally a pattern in the madness and soon translates the code into English. And shockingly, they're all introduced to an alien AI chatbot called Jerry. But like most chatbots these days, turns out he's a fucking tard, and much like the last POTUS, can't speak in coherent proper sentences for love nor money.
True international effort to pressure.
What you talking about, Willis?
But it also turns out that he's not actually a Mogadon after all, but just a bit immature like a child, and he then states how happy he is to be there and meet him and stuff. Until resident killjoy Dr. Norman totally kills the mood after having just experienced first contact with alien life, because as a professional shrink what loves having inappropriate relations with his patients, he's pretty worried about an immature yet sentient artificial intelligence possibly maybe having emotions and stuff, and frets about what exactly would happen if it gets mad. Because technically, Jez has been cooped up underwater for 300 years with no one to talk to. And so he's just the equivalent of a loser nobody, and likely has less social skills than Elon Musk or your local incel. Anyway, after another title card which ominously talks about a monster, the station starts to shake like it's been attacked. And after Beth once again totally bollocks her ex-lover boy, and this time for telling Barnes about how she's a right basket case, they randomly discover the mangled up body of the admin assistant, whose body has been pulverised like a rag doll.
Well, she's dead.
But before they can wonder why people keep going out for underwater strolls when there's a killer jellyfish on the loose, he starts bloody raining eggs. And fucking giant ones at that. And racing to get the heck out of Dodge now Barnes has noticed a giant sea monster lighting up the sonar, they wonder what on earth could make eggs that massive. Good question. Old school Lizzo maybe?
Bruh.
Anyway, now with two fuckers dead and no help coming, we cut to battle stations, as they realise that Jerry can now hear them in real time without having to type stuff. And worryingly, the now omniscient AI soon has a total meltdown when they say they can't talk right now, because he don't want to stop chatting given this is his first social interaction in 3 fucking centuries, when suddenly the shower of eggs return and so does the monster. and the 40-foot squid thing then starts smashing up the station in a riot strop. And after trying to apologise to Jerry if they'd made him angry in any way, saying they didn't want to talk to him earlier, fire soon starts to break out all around them, and they hilariously all leave just before a message comes up from Jerry saying he's going to go and totally kill them all because reasons. And they just can't believe an AI's gone fully homicidal only minutes after becoming sentient, because there was just no possible way of knowing that that was remotely a possibility, given no one has ever made films about exactly that kind of scenario. So how were they to bloody know, bro? And whilst all fighting for their lives and trying to save the station from going tits up, Harry's out here slacking off in his bunk and snoozing away, as Barnes soon gets himself squished by a bulkhead door and poor Teddy ends up being totally roasted, but not in a fun Comedy Central way. Later, once everything calms down a bit, Norman tries to explain that dying thing to this childlike alien AI, and says that summoning up giant fuck-off squid monsters for shits and giggles just ain't fucking on when said manifestations keep killing them and stuff. But the AI just shrugs and says stop waffling on about how easily you fleshbags die and shut up about it already. And also, stop bloody calling me Jerry, because only recently deceased washed up chat show hosts are called that these days, and also loser Rick and Morty characters.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, fair enough.
Also later, Norman pays a visit to that sleepyhead Harry fella, who says that he totally slept through that giant fire which has killed another 2 of their colleagues after an alien AI retard didn't want to go to bed or some shit. But Harry just shrugs and goes back to reading his favourite book, which ironically turns out to be 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And also ominously says how he's never got past page 87 because it was just too scary, bro. Anyway, Norm reluctantly heads off on a walk to conduct some repairs, whilst his nutter of an ex-floozy totally promises to watch out for him on the cameras, just in case that naughty AI fella decides to summon up some more Lovecraftian beasts and shit. But on his way back, he gets into a bit of trouble with his suit, and asks over the radio whether it's normal for bubbles to be coming out of his hose. And before she can say, well, only if you swallowed some fairy liquid in the last few hours, she totally ghosts him when he's attacked by a passing sea snake, until Harry steps in and totally saves his ass. I just can't believe she's out looking for food on the alien spacecraft when he was only seconds away from death, especially given there wouldn't be any over there after 300 years anyway. So naturally, he turns the tables and totally bollocks her for once when she gets back, because looking for 300-year-old grub when the cupboards are already fully stocked is a pathetic excuse for trying to leave him to die, and totally not cool, bro. And after checking the shelves for herself, she's totally flabbergasted to find more food in the fridge than the standard Tuesday night at Piers Morgan's gaff, and soon starts accusing Harry of hiding it all and totally setting her up to look fucking bonkers. But clinical psychiatrist Dr. Norman ain't having any of it, and just gaslights her by insisting that she was clearly hallucinating and likely just having another psychotic break, and also projecting all of her resentment and suppressed anger at what happened 20 odd years ago back onto him, and thereby subconsciously justifying and leaving him for dead. And after dodging the question as to whether she indeed went inside the sphere or not, she storms off in a riot strop, as poor Dr. Norman instantly regrets siding with obvious wacko Harry after he finds the shelves indeed now stocked, but this time strangely chock full of copies of his favourite book, but weirdly without any pages after page 87. Weird. And after getting no response from Jerry about all this utterly mental shit, Norm has a go at deciphering the alien code himself, and discovers that the initial translation was indeed wrong all along, and his name is not actually Jerry, but Harry.
Wow.
And in a shocking twist, what no one could ever see coming, turns out the guy who's always asleep when impossible mental shit starts happening all around him is actually the one causing it all, given the sphere has granted him the power to manifest his dreams and stuff. And worse, page 87 describes a giant 40-foot squid what he's always hated, which totally proves that he indeed has the power to manifest his fantasies. And before he can say, oh please let his next dream be about oiled up lesbos in a small mud pit, they realise that the retarded alien AI was simply Harry's subconscious thoughts being projected onto the computer.
No way!
Yes way. And the reason it's a giant squid is because Harry totally hates them, as we found out during the setup scene back in Act 1 where he almost choked on the calamari, and thereby fulfills the prophecy of Chekhov's cephalopod. Or some shit. So after Beth totally assures him that she never went inside the giant golden testicle thing, Norm helps her concoct a cocktail of drugs to put their buddy into a dreamless sleep, and thereby save them all from being attacked by giant egg-laying hellbeasts and phony fakey sentient AI.
It's about damn time. It's about damn time.
Once contacting the surface and scheduling a ride out within 6 hours now the storm above has passed, Dr. Norm is attacked by more sea snakes, but this time from inside. So Beth promptly locks him in her lab and tells him to inject himself with a dose of that sedative and stop him subconsciously doing a bunch of bad things. Cause turns out he accidentally kind of went into the sphere himself when he went to retrieve Harry that one time and then proceeded to stare directly into the giant glowing alien orb thing. Which totally explains that unfortunate incident earlier where a bunch of mutant jellyfish totally gangbanged Grammy Award winning rapper Queen Latifah to death, given that's what she was afraid of as a small child.
Okay.
But unfortunately, he don't really like needles, so instead escapes through the upper hatch and out into the fucking sea. And before you can say how the frig has he survived the enormous underwater pressure, let alone freezing temperatures without their special suits, he reunites with his ex-floozy, what almost got him killed for the second time today, and soon realises that she did go into the sphere after all. And now all three of them are cursed with the power of literally making their dreams come true, and yet which always seem to end badly because reasons. And thinking about it, that's totally what must have happened to the original crew of the ship too.
Hey, that's fucked up.
Anyway, turns out that in a moment of hallucinatory paranoia, suicidal basket case Dr. Beth set up a load of charges around the base to totally blow them all to kingdom come. And now they've all only got about 10 minutes before they all explode worse than my bowels on Taco Bell night. So rushing on over to the mini-sub, they find themselves transported back into the alien ship and then lost in a maze of hallucinations. Before Super Shrink Dr. Norman tells Harry to pull himself together and stop morbidly doom projecting about how they're all destined to die down here because of that log entry earlier. And after finally breaking free of the illusion, they race on up to the surface, as the base and ship soon get exploded real good and proper. After spending a few hours in a decompression chamber, Beth thanks her ex-therapist, who totally took advantage of her back in the day, for now saving her life, and finally lets go of all her baggage about him having an inappropriate affair with her back when he was married and she was super vulnerable and shit. Then they all decide what on earth they're going to tell top brass, given they've just destroyed a 300-year-old spaceship and a $100 million state-of-the-art underwater military base.
Right to jail, right away.
So they instead just use their new alien powers to totally forget about what they all just went through, as that would get them off the hook with the military chiefs, and also fix the paradox about how the entry log was labelled an unknown event. Though thereby still dooming the original crew to bonk each other on the head in a state of paranoid delusion whilst eating bags of peanuts and shit. And we end with the sphere totally surviving the giant fuck-off underwater explosion and then zooming off into deep space. And presumably to terrorise some other poor saps on some other strange worlds, and manipulate them into thinking that they're talking to a mentally handicapped alien AI, whilst then harassing them with giant underwater squids. Or some bloody shit. And that's it. That's the movie. Though my favourite part was trying to figure out why this flick was such a fucking mess. Like, even if Jerry was a manifestation of Harry's subconscious, why did it suddenly go homicidal, given he seems to be a laid-back, peaceful kind of guy? And what the fuck were all the fresh footprints about when they first entered the 300-year-old ship? Oh, I don't know. I'd say let's ask the author, but that Mikey Crichton fella's already freaking pegged it. Liberties! But anyway, that's a plot and that's your lot. Considering in that bell thing, so you don't bloody miss any future recaps. Tell me if you like this flick in the comments if you have time. And I'll fall asleep and make my dreams come fatally true with you in the next one.